Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. A couple of things to point out. Yes, this is a late edition of Who Wore It Better. I said at the end of the last week's segment that there would be a delay on this one because I was going to be out of town for the first half of this week. I wasn't able to watch Raw or Smackdown as they happened, so I caught up with the shows when I got home so I could do this review. Concurrently, I am also currently suffering from a sore throat that really hampers my ability to talk in a very loud manner. This is the loudest I'm going to get, so I hope you bear with me as I try not to die while talking. So let's begin. Starting off with Raw, before we get into the storyline stuff, let's just talk about Seth Rollins' injury that he sustained last week on Raw that I did not get to talk about in Who Wore It Better because the news of the injury came about after I'd already recorded and everything, so that didn't really make the cut last week for me. I echo the sentiments of what a lot of people are saying. This is absolutely terrible timing. It's so unfortunate that a guy who's worked so hard to come back after injuring his knee in the first place a year and a half ago to have another injury from what was essentially a freak accident. A lot of conflicting reports as to what's going to happen with it Mania, because basically now it sounds like they say it a torn MCL. It sounds like they're going to keep things going as planned with Rollins fighting Triple H at Mania, although I don't know how much of those plans are going to be affected from point A to point B when your babyface is out for several weeks with this injury. You know, they say he's good to go internally. There are these reports he's good to go. Cole on Monday said that his WrestleMania status is much in doubt, but people are saying, oh, 8 weeks is the prognosis. Well, that sounds like a very, very generous estimate. I think even if he makes the 8 weeks, there's still a little bit of time before Mania, but even then, how hard is Seth Rollins going to go if he is medically cleared to compete at WrestleMania after 8 weeks? Is he going to be his normal mile-a-minute self fighting Triple H, or is it going to be a much slower-paced thing? Or is it going to be predominantly Triple H just attacking the leg and Rollins selling it with a couple of hope spots here and there? I don't think, no matter what happens, if Rollins is able to compete at Mania, which I certainly hope he does, I hope he's willing and able to do it, I just don't think it's going to be the match that we were hoping for. And I hope that Rollins doesn't try and push himself so hard that he further injures the knee, either during rehab or in the match itself with Triple H. I mean, it's going to be very difficult. Remember last year when Roman Reigns took a few weeks off in his feud with Triple H in the last couple weeks before Mania because he had to get his nose surgically repaired or something like that? That was brutal, and that was for a storyline that we did not care about. So imagine now, in the storyline that does have some legs, that we do want to see a payoff to, imagine seeing this now where the babyface is just going to be gone for an undetermined amount of time. I mean, he could probably come back on a TV a little bit before he's medically cleared, but what really can he do? Even though the timing of this injury is terrible, and I hate the fact that Rollins got hurt, from a pure dramatic standpoint, I think this is actually a positive, if you get what I'm saying. I'm not trying to, glorify someone's injury. I would never do that, but I'm saying it's that adds a lot of intrigue. Because if they are going to go through with this Mania match with Triple H, now the knee is 100% the focus. Will Rollins be able to compete? It's very reminiscent, in kayfabe land, from WrestleMania 2 when Hulk Hogan had the bandaged ribs at the hand of King Kong Bundy going into their cage match for the title. After Rollins got injured, a lot of people were saying, oh, Samoa Joe's unsafe because he hurt Seth Rollins here and he hurt, he hurt Tyson Kidd back at NXT and broke his neck, and Tyson Kidd will never be able to wrestle again. And I don't agree with that. I think if Samoa Joe were truly unsafe, then we'd be seeing a lot more stories of wrestlers getting hurt. If Seth Rollins were truly unsafe, then a lot more people over this period of time would be hurt more. I think it's just I think it's a run of bad luck between Rollins and Samoa Joe for all these injuries either to happen to them or at their hands, but I think it's the law of averages. When you work as much as these guys do in a style that they do, then yeah, injuries are going to happen, and it's bad timing. It's bad luck. I don't think these guys are being unsafe. The way Rollins tweaked his knee going down the coquina clutch, that was just the two bodies. They weren't really coordinated, but I think that was just kind of a heat of the moment thing. I would never put the blame on Samoa Joe for that any more than I would put the blame on Seth Rollins for hurting Finn Balor last year at SummerSlam. So yes, 8 weeks is the magic number as far as what most news sites are saying as far as when Rollins will come back. It's a very tight timeline. It's a very generous timeline. I think after a few weeks, once they hit Fastlane, it's either do or don't. They're either going to go forward 100% with Rollins versus Triple H at Mania, or they're not. That's kind of their deadline. And again, even if Rollins is ready to go, I don't think it's going to be a 4 to 5 star match like what we would kind of expect on paper between those two. It will be a very different match if the match goes through. but hopefully it will not result in any more injuries. In worst case scenario, if Seth Rollins can't work WrestleMania, the question is, oh, who's Triple H going to face? Maybe not have him work at all. Anyway, on to the show itself. Raw in Portland, Oregon, my hometown. Starting off with the inevitable Samoa Joe. Interesting nickname for him, coming out to sign his Raw contract. Stephanie once again just crushing McFoley's balls, just crushing him into a fine powder. Terrific promo by Samoa Joe coming out there. And as you felt like every word he said in that promo, he meant it. Like he was just really letting a lot of pent-up anger and frustration out there. I thought it wasn't even a very long promo. It wasn't a very wordy promo, but I think that he got every point he needed to make. He made it. Roman Reigns comes out to interrupt because why? I don't get it. I mean, like, yeah, Reigns and Rollins are kind of buddies now. In one way, it's cool because Roman Reigns has got his finger in a lot of pots now because, like, he's doing something with Braun. He's doing something with Taker, maybe. He's got this thing with Samoa Joe on Monday, but it's like he's kind of everywhere. And it's like, but at the same time, he's losing a lot. And so I wonder, it's like they're pushing him as this big thing, but like his success rate ain't so great right now. A lot of foreshadowing in this next couple of minutes of this segment. You know, Roman Reigns says, when you signed that contract, you stepped in my yard. Very interesting verbiage that he would use that because that's what The Undertaker used to say. So maybe more foreshadowing to Mania. Mick Foley says, as long as I'm still general manager, I get to make the matches. His wording there, I don't think that was accidental because, I mean, maybe Mick Foley will not be general manager come end of WrestleMania time. Who knows? But I think the way he said it, as long as I'm still general manager, and the fact there's still this tension between himself and Stephanie leads me to believe something's going to happen there. Nia Jax taking on Bayley in singles action. At the top of the segment, they announced that Bayley was going to fight Charlotte next week on Raw for the women's title. We've seen how these Raw women's title defenses go. I don't want to speculate too much what's going to happen right now. I'm not too optimistic, but we'll see what happens there. Anyway, I'm less optimistic now after seeing what happened on this segment in particular. Nia Jax, the one knock I had on her for this match was she only had one sell, and that was hand to face. Like, oh, that's the only sell she really had. But everything else, as far as like character and expression, I really liked. Just the way she talked trash and just kind of like laughed at Bayley. I thought that was great. Bayley not on a comeback here. She's getting Nia run into the ring post a couple of times. She's looking set up to win. Charlotte comes down, costs Bayley the match. Nia hits her with a Samoan drop to win the match. And that's the weird thing. The thing I didn't like about the fact that Bayley, she's the number one contender. She's going to fight Charlotte next week. But here, she loses to Nia Jax. And I get it because, you know, oh, she lost dirty. Like, Charlotte interfered and cost her the match. So, like, that, on one hand, I can see that happening. But I think the timing of it is just not that great. If this were a fast lane thing happening, then yeah, I could imagine there'd be some time for Bayley to get her heat back in those next 4 weeks. But the fact that it's the week before the women's title defense, not a very good look. Braun Strowman murders 4 jobbers, technically 3 because one of them ran away. So weird to see Braun going back to squashing local talent. I thought he was beyond this by now. Anderson and Gallows defend the tag titles against Cesaro and Sheamus. I was kind of surprised that this rematch was happening on Raw and not like on the pay-per-view. It seems kind of a hot shot thing to be doing it so soon. Enzo and Cass materialize at some point during this match to watch at ringside because that's normally what happens, right? I like the cool double team spot where Sheamus did the rolling senton and then Cesaro follows up with a double stomp. That was kind of a cool little double team move. It was a lot better than the double team move they keep doing where it's like Sheamus puts him down with the white noise and Cesaro gently helps him go down as well. Again, even when the move connects and looks good, it still doesn't make sense. The match ends when Cesaro knocks Gallows out of the ring. He rolls into Enzo. Enzo, I don't know what he was doing. His sell after Gallows like rolled into his leg was like the funniest and weirdest thing I've ever seen. Just the way, what he was doing with his hand like this, like he was getting ready to sing a song. I don't know what the hell happened. Anyway, Gallows kicks Enzo. Cass kicks Gallows, and then the match is over, ends in a disqualification, and that was that. Cruiserweight time as Akira Tozawa makes his Raw debut against Drew Gulak. There's a lot to be said about what's wrong with the Cruiserweight division on Raw, but the one thing I do like that they do is that every once in a while, every few weeks, they will do like a debut for someone in the Cruiserweight division and showcase that person and highlight that person and make you have a reason to tune into 205 Live. Like, here's why this person's unique. Here's why this person's important. Like they did with Noam Dar. They did it with Mustafa Ali a few weeks ago. They did it with Tozawa on Monday. So I think in that way, that's kind of a good way to highlight the new cruiserweights they introduced. It's kind of a trickle down effect. Maybe like the long-term plan of this is that once they introduce all these bigger names, then like maybe we'll have some kind of better payoff with the cruiserweights on Raw. Maybe that's a little too optimistic, but it's definitely good for 205 Live and trying to get eyeballs on 205 Live. The match ends when Tozawa nails Gulak with the German suplex. Is it me, or does Tozawa's hype-up noise sound a little familiar?
Tozawa.
Chase, you can't be serious.
Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens make their way to the ring. Chris Jericho putting quarterback Tom Brady on the list after the Super Bowl the night before, which makes my heart sing. Anyway, he then challenges Kevin Owens to a friendly battle between two best friends, title for WrestleMania. KO demurs at first, but then Goldberg comes out, and this is kind of a nice little overlapping thing. These two sides do have some history because Goldberg was on the Kevin Owens show a few weeks ago, so it's almost kind of a callback to that. Goldberg, first he accepts Lesnar's WrestleMania challenge, and then he challenges Kevin Owens, I should say, to a match for the Universal title at Fastlane. Jericho's about to put Goldberg on the list. Goldberg puts himself on the list. That was kind of funny a moment there. And so then, yeah, Jericho, to try to further plant seeds of dissension into the team Kevin and Chris, he makes the match and accepts the match on behalf of Kevin. Kevin is livid. He's apoplectic over it. The one thing I will say, though, I have a pretty strong feeling Kevin is not winning at Fastlane. The New Day taking on the Shining Stars. One thing that was very interesting about this match was the announcers spent a lot of time and effort building up the Shining Stars ice cream as legitimate tag team competition to the New Day ice cream, putting over the fact they're cousins and they have great chemistry ice cream. And then at the end, what happens ultimately is that Xavier Woods ice cream hits the flying ice cream onto ice cream, and then the ice cream team wins. Ice cream. Rock and Roll Express going into the Hall of Fame, very deserving accolade for these guys. I mean, these are probably one of the most iconic, influential tag teams of the last 30 years. You think of all the tag teams either directly or indirectly influenced by the Rock and Roll Express in particular, and their feud with, for example, the Midnight Express in the 80s, the NWA. And again, this is a very interesting example, kind of with Kurt Angle. They're inducting people or a person or persons who spent more time outside of WWE into the WWE Hall of Fame. I think what fans, though, need to embrace now is that even though there are still faults with the induction process in the Hall of Fame, it's still one guy making these decisions. At the end of the day, I think they're aware now that it's not just WWE anymore. Like, they have to start incorporating, like, wrestling history at large into it. So if you're going to have, like, it's not a truly legitimate Hall of Fame like what other wrestling Hall of Fames are out there, but it's the biggest one. It's the one with the most notoriety. So if you're going to try and honor wrestling's past greats, then you got to incorporate, you got to go, I think, outside the box and dip into sources that weren't necessarily true WWE talents. So the Rock and Roll Express makes all the sense in the world to me. U.S. title on the line as Chris Jericho defends against Sami Zayn in a rematch from last week on Raw when Zayn beat Jericho clean in a non-title match. Again, very similar to the tag title match earlier in the night. I thought they really hot-shotted this one. I think they really could have benefited from making this stretch out to Fastlane, having Sami Zayn challenge Jericho there. I don't think these two should have fought 2 weeks in a row, especially the way this match went down. It seemed very abridged. It wasn't nearly on the level of their match last week, in my opinion. Kevin Owens kicks him while the referee's not looking, and Jericho hits the codebreaker and wins, and that was pretty much it. I feel that they really could have benefited from building this up a few more weeks. The fact that they put this on the same show 1 week after, to me, it's rushing things. Austin Aries has a banana in his pocket, and he's happy to see you as he has a one-on-one interview with the Cruiserweight champion Neville. Neville and Aries talk about the impending Fatal 5-Way happening on 205 Live the next night for the #1 contendership for the title. Neville then runs down all of his prospective opponents, and then they all come out one at a time. You've got Cedric Alexander, Noam Dar, Jack Gallagher, Tony Nese's Abs, then TJ Perkins, who comes out and incites a brawl between all 6 of the wrestlers, and then we have a 6-man tag team match, the faces and the heels, which really this match didn't do much for me. The match ends when the faces win after Noam Dar goes into business for himself, some miscommunication because he wasn't following the King's orders, and then at some point during this match, Tony Nese got injured. He injured his ankle. I don't know if it was from the corkscrew plancha in the segment before the 6-man tag team match, or if it was during the match itself. Either way, I hope Nese has a speedy recovery. Main event time as Roman Reigns takes on Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe tapping X to break out and attacking Roman during his entrance. Both guys spend the whole match just beating the hell out of each other, which I thought was terrific stuff. Really good sample of what Samoa Joe is capable of in the ring. If you're not familiar with his earlier work before getting signed or with NXT, I think this is a good look for him because he got all the shit in. The match ends when Braun Strowman comes out with the distraction. Roman Reigns hits him a couple times, gets him off the apron, but he eats an Uranagi by Samoa Joe, and Joe wins his Raw debut. And yes, it was dirty, but heels, they win dirty sometimes. It still looked very good for Samoa Joe because at the end of the day, he's the hired hitman, he's the destroyer, he is the inevitable one. And so I think this is a very good look for Samoa Joe. The whole show, top to bottom, just the opening segment, then the closing match with Roman Reigns, and then just the package they rolled throughout the show to show what he did to Seth Rollins. I think this is how you make a star. And I haven't seen someone get built like that since, gosh, I think it was when Seth Rollins turned heel on the Shield. So the show ends when Strowman continues his assault on Roman Reigns, slams him through the barricade, and again, very strong night for Braun Strowman. After killing the jobbers, he's killing Roman Reigns as well. It's SmackDown time, and Daniel Bryan kicks things off. He's the hometown boy, getting one of the biggest pops of the night. Very interesting. It was 1 year ago, almost to the day, on Raw, where he announced his retirement in front of the same crowd and everything. It was very interesting timing. The Miz is the first to interrupt him. I thought it was very interesting they didn't take things to the next level in their rivalry on this night. Adam Pacitti said something on Twitter the other day that was very on point, where if they wanted to do something with these two going to Mania, then this would be the night to take things physical. Again, the fact that they've been having so much interaction ever since like the pipe bomb thing on Talking Smack all those months ago, the fact that it doesn't seem to be leading to a Mania match at this point makes me wonder, like, what's the point of them doing that if there's never going to be a physical payoff between those two wrestlers? Maybe they'll have an advancement on that at Elimination Chamber, but who really knows? So as Miz and Daniel Bryan are talking, out comes Corbin and Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles. They're all talking about how they're going to win the Elimination Chamber match. Daniel Bryan makes a fatal four-way right then and there. This was one of my favorite matches of the night. A great way to start the show off in terms of in-ring action. Again, The Miz has been mocking Daniel Bryan's moveset for quite some time now, but here in Seattle, it felt more visceral. It felt more like, ooh, evil heel stuff. I loved the funny sequence of the non-stop schoolboys between Ambrose and Styles and Miz just over and over again. That was hilarious. Then Corbin killing all three of them with the Tower of Doom, as Mauro Ranallo called it. Styles hit his phenomenal forearm on The Miz, and Maurice pulled The Miz out, and then Baron Corbin hit the End of Days on Styles to win the match. And I think that was a huge win for Corbin. Out of all those four guys, he was the one who needed it the most. I don't think Corbin's going to win an Elimination Chamber, but that one gives him, this win gives him a lot of momentum and thinking, man, maybe he could win the whole thing. The Nikki Bella and Natalya interview segment, the split screen, satellite, whatever it was, this whole segment was just, it wasn't doing it for me. You know, I think the whole thing is, this is so similar to the Nikki Bella Carmella feud from a few months ago, only now we're throwing in way more reality TV crossover stuff and all this whole Jerry Springer element to it. Natalya's going is totally off the rails and talking about how John's going to leave her and you'll never have a child and this and that. It seems to me, this is kind of undoing everything that like the women's revolution, the Divas Revolution, what have you, was trying to build up the last year and a half. I feel like this kind of content is just so counterintuitive to what like the legit workers are trying to do. And you have the reality TV division of the women's division in WWE, and this is what they're doing. And it just, these two things, in a, you know, I'd like to see a balance, but it just seems so black and white to me. It is so contrasting in styles that it almost repels one another, in my opinion. This, again, this feud I'm not a huge fan of, and because we've seen it before with Nikki and Carmella, I just wanted to end already. Dolph Ziggler taking on Apollo Crews. Crews beats Ziggler in very quick and surprising fashion. It's one thing for Ziggler to beat lower to mid-card guys very quickly. It's another thing for him to lose to those same lower to mid-card guys very quickly. For a guy who took Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles and Baron Corbin to extreme levels just in the last few months alone, to have these short matches where he's like pinned out of nowhere by Apollo Crews, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I get what they were building to later on, but it's like you're trying to do this heel turn thing, and I think he's lost more matches than he's won since turning heel. And when you have a heel or face turn, I think what you would do after the turn is to win a lot of matches. And Ziggler has been maybe 50-50 at best. And it's not a good look. Anyways, Ziggler, he gets his heat back. He beats Crews up immediately with a chair. Kalisto comes out. He thwarts Kalisto's attempts. And then later on, Daniel Bryan makes a match for Elimination Chamber, pitting Ziggler against Crews and Kalisto in a handicap match. A dual contract signing segment for the two other women's feuds happening separate from Nikki Bella and Natalya. It's very interesting. 3 women's singles matches happening at one pay-per-view. I can't remember the last time that's ever happened on any American Fed, WWE, TNA, WCW, anywhere like that. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Please correct me. But anyway, you had Alexa Bliss and Naomi, and you had Becky Lynch and Mickie James. Mickie James bringing back the super serious, slow heel voice. Alexa totally burying Naomi by just ignoring her and not even regarding her as her opponent and talking primarily to Becky Lynch up until the very end when she signs the contract. Naomi gets her heat back though with a big kick to Alexa Bliss. They have a big brawl. Naomi has a big flying move outside of the ring. And so, yeah, kind of a good way to end the match. Good thing for the faces here going into Elimination Chamber. And I have to say, I like the way they're doing this dual build-up because you've got the team of Alexa and Mickie James and this new partnership for Becky Lynch and Naomi, but it's not a tag team match happening pay-per-view, it's two singles matches. So it's very interesting the way they're building it. I think the women's division, for all the crap I'm talking about Natalya and Nikki Bella, I think as the sum of its parts, the women's division on SmackDown is one of the bright points of the show. 12-man tag team match, just bring all the tag teams, just send them all the tag teams out there. We don't care, we're just trying to build to the tag team turmoil match at Elimination Chamber. We're not going to do a tag team chamber match this year because that was a clusterfuck last year. We're not going to bring that back anytime soon. So let's just have a tag team turmoil match instead. I feel like we've seen this setting 100 times before on SmackDown, where it's like the face teams all anchored by American Alpha and the heel teams anchored by the Usos or whoever. And they're just like, it's this big multi-man thing. It's just this big blah kind of thing. But in a very rare twist, the heels won. Yes, Rhino, he gored Connor, and then Victor came with a flying knee to Rhino and won the match. The Ascension winning via pinfall and the heels winning these multi-man matches. I can't believe it. I've never seen it before. John Cena versus AJ Styles in the main event. We all were making fun of this match going into it because it's like, oh, it's the first time ever on SmackDown Live, even though these guys have wrestled each other countless times over the years, the decade plus and everything. And we've seen all the memes, okay? We know that this is a kind of a tired match. But on the other hand, we haven't seen this match since late 2014. So it's not like we've, it's like this just happened, So we got a bit of a break. In fact, I find it incredible that they had the restraint to wait this long since the brand split to have Orton and Cena fighting at all because they were on the same brand. I thought it was kind of miraculous. This match started out really good. Orton getting a lot of heat on early on, just wrecking Cena, throwing him into the stairs and throwing him onto the announce table. The table didn't break. This match, by no means was it like my favorite match of theirs. It wasn't their best match the two had, but I mean, it's still, these are two guys who are reliable workers and they wrestle a certain style that is designed to get a certain reaction out of people, and they did what they did and it worked. The crowd was into it the whole time. The referee gets knocked out when Cena's going for another AA. Bray Wyatt comes in, beats up John Cena. Then Luke Harper comes in. Luke Harper, who's going to be wrestling Orton at Elimination Chamber. He finally nails Bray with a discus clothesline. The crowd pops huge for that. And in the end, Orton goes to the RKO. Harper shoves him out of the way. Cena hits him with the attitude adjustment. And then Cena wins the match. So I don't think it hurts Orton to lose this because he's got some time to bide leading into WrestleMania, whoever he's fighting at the WrestleMania for the title. Luke Harper looks really good in this. I think that this was just exactly what we needed to see from this kind of dynamic. I think, again, we've seen Orton and Cena 100 times, but to have that extra wrinkle of Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper getting involved made it, the ending at least, feel very unique, and it felt different. So ultimately, Cena wins. I thought it was a cool finish, and it was an enjoyable match. Well, before my voice dies out on me, time now for me to decide who won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And folks, I got to give the nod to SmackDown once again this week. Now on Raw, I loved the way they treated Samoa Joe from beginning to end, and even doing the pre-taped stuff in the middle, showing the highlights from Raw the last week. Really showing him as this killer, really treat him like a star. Very rarely do you see someone graduate from NXT to the main roster on a similar path, if not like better path, than where they were at NXT. Usually like main eventers in NXT kind of start from square one or like mid-card at best, but Samoa Joe has been immediately inserted into the main event scene on Raw, and it makes sense, and it feels right, and it feels good. And so yes, Samoa Joe was treated the way he should have been, not just recently, but the way he should have been treated years ago, to be perfectly honest. And I will have to say, the other bright spots I had for Raw this week were the Cruiserweight segments, oddly enough. I loved Akira Tozawa's debut. Again, following that trend of they know how to debut new Cruiserweights on Raw. I have to give them the nod for that. Austin Aries and his just getting flummoxed at all the interruptions in his exclusive one-on-one interview with Neville, I thought was great. Again, I thought that the segment that preceded the six-man was better than the match itself, so I just have to give the nod for that segment. But in my opinion on Raw, there was just too much hot-shotting, matches that really should have been saved for like pay-per-views. In fact, I would almost have to argue that Samoa Joe and Reigns, even though it was good, on one hand, I was glad to see that match happening there, but that's a match that really should be saved for a pay-per-view. Not like Fastlane, because Roman is taken care of, but like, man, that'd be cool to have that on a different pay-per-view down the line. I almost would have had Sami Zayn fight Samoa Joe, because it would have made Samoa Joe look that much more of a killer, because everyone knows Sami Zayn is one of the best sellers on Raw, so I thought that would have been a better matchup. Again, hot shot in the US title match, hot shot in the tag title match. They're probably hot shot in the women's title match next week, in my opinion, but I'm not going to count that into the score here. But you get what I'm saying here. Also, I just didn't like the fact, again, speaking to Bayley, the fact that she was named the number one contender. She's going to, she beat Charlotte, she's going to fight for the title, and then she loses. Again, it was interference, so it wasn't a clean loss, but still. Meanwhile, on Smackdown, I really enjoyed the Fatal 4-Way that started the show. I liked the Cena-Orton match. Again, we've seen them wrestle a bunch of times, but the Wyatts getting involved added a new wrinkle, and the fact we haven't seen it in actually a couple of years still makes it kind of like, fun to watch. It's like not like the same slog we saw several years ago. And the dual contract signing segment I enjoyed as well. I did not like the Nikki Natalya segment. I do want that feud to end, but ultimately it's like not the worst thing I could have seen on SmackDown or Raw. But anyway, that's kind of my take for Raw and SmackDown this week. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and don't forget to vote in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Hopefully the next time you'll see me is the Elimination Chamber review after Sunday night. Hopefully my voice will be a little better recovered from there. So until then, be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Bryan Zane, and I'll see you next time.